has passed down from person to person in our parampara system. So even though in the 4th chapter, Krishna mentions that he said this to Vivishwan, he said this to Manu, and so forth, their names are not here. It is said it's Krishna, Brahma, Narada, Vyasa, Madhva, and so forth, all the way up to A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya. So it's because there are 2 lines. It's nice to know, right? Tomorrow if someone asks us, we've been coming to the temple, we've been reading the Bhagavad Gita, but like, hey, like, what's this discrepancy? It's good to know to answer people. So there are 2 lines. One is the seminal line, and the other one is the spiritual line. So seminal line is actually the passed down of the Bhagavad Gita from like a king to another and so forth. So when the Lord shared this to the sun god Vivishwan and Baku, that is the seminal line. That's also called the material line because it's like genealogical order of father passing on to son and so forth. And that's where it got lost. And Krishna mentions this to Arjuna that, hey, this kind of got lost. So I'm reiterating the whole Bhagavad Gita to you now. And what he shares with him is the spiritual line. And that's what's mentioned here, the specific succession to the spiritual line. Then, so who did Krishna tell this verse to? Brahma. And how do we know that? Actually, the first sloka of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Vyasadeva himself says, he says, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadhyasya Yatondeyadi Itaratas Charteshvabhignya Swarat Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye Muhyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Vari Mritani Mayo Yatra Trisargo Mrisham Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi Tene Brahma Hridaya. He transmitted his knowledge to the heart of Brahma. So that's what that's how our spiritual line starts. Then a question comes, right? Like, so in the 4th chapter again, if you want to know further about this, please read the commentary to Bhagavad Gita's 4th chapter, which Srila Prabhupada explains so much in detail about this. So one can think that, okay, so it got lost with Vivishwan and Ikshwaku and so forth, but how did it appear here, like Brahma, Narada, Vyasa? How did that come about? And actually tells Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, who's actually writing this down? Vyasadeva, yes, because he's writing the Mahabharata. So Vyasadeva writes this down and then it goes forth. And that's in this spiritual line. So this is the original cosmic history of Bhagavad Gita and how it appears in the world. It is said that Gita, Shastras, Krishna's words are actually non-different from Krishna. Anavriti Shabdha. That's what the Vedanta Sutra calls it. Just like Krishna is unlimited, his names are unlimited, his words are unlimited. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami actually talks about this in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela 24.318. Krishna Tulya Bhagavata Vibhu Sarvashraya Prati Sloke Pratyakshare Nana Artha Kaya Krishna Tulya Bhagavata Vibhu Sarvashraya Prati Sloke Pratyakshare Nanartha Kaya. Srimad Bhagavatam is as great as Krishna, the Supreme Lord and shelter of everything. In each verse, each and every verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, each and every syllable, there are various meanings, is what Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is saying. A very nice example of this is in Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a sloka 1.7.10. It goes like this. Sutta vacha Atma Ramascha Munayo Nirgrantapi Urukrame Kurvanti Ahaitu Kim Bhaktim Ittam Bhutva Guno Hari. It's a beautiful sloka. It's called as the Atma Rama sloka. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives 81 different translations or commentaries on this sloka. So that goes to show how the Lord's words can have unlimited meaning, just like the Lord, just like his holy name. So one will guess, now we're talking about the commentarial history of Bhagavad Gita. Who do you think was the first commentator of Bhagavad Gita? Any guesses? it was actually Krishna himself, the original speaker of Bhagavad Gita. It is said that in the Mahabharata, later on, after the Mahabharata war was won, after Krishna settled in Dwaraka, after the Pandavas settled in their the new kingdom, not new kingdom, but then in their well acclaimed kingdom, Krishna meets Arjuna and he speaks to him, and he gives something called as the Anugita. He's like, hey, we just have 45 minutes to talk just before the battle, but if you have any other questions, or you said you don't have any, but I want to say something more. And then he explains a little more, and it's called the Anugita. And it's called, we don't hear a lot about it, but something like that exists if anyone's interested. And later on the eve of Krishna's departure from this world, he meets his other friend, or best friend, and cousin, Uddhava. And he gives the popular Uddhava Gita also. So that's again another commentary from the Lord on the Bhagavad Gita. There's so many different commentators or different individuals who begin to expound the different meanings of Bhagavad Gita to almost like an onion, right? Like peel the different layers to get to the actual meaning. But unlike an onion, there's nothing in the end of peeling it, but here it's like a treasure trove. So some of the earliest commentaries are from pioneer acharyas like Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Vishnu Swami, and so forth. And all of them have commentated on the Bhagavad Gita. Thanks to technology, there is a website called as bhagavadgita.org. And if you go in there, check it out, if you click on any sloka of the Bhagavad Gita, you get all these commentaries. Pretty cool, right? So if anyone's interested in reading more, that's available. Thing is, though, all those commentaries might not match because everyone has their own opinion. They see things from different angles. There's this one American writer who says that if two people agree on every single thing, one of them is useless. But if two people disagree on everything, both of them are useless. So it's not the same. They all know the ultimate goal is Krishna. We're the servant of the Lord. So the essence is the same, but they're looking at it from different angles. The next generation of commentaries are actually written by, in the 17th and 18th century. Frankly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the six Goswamis, they don't necessarily give any commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. Rather, they just refer to these verses from the Bhagavad Gita. Like Rupa Goswami refers to it, Jiva Goswami refers to it, and that's about it. They don't give any commentary. But later on, Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur in the 17th and the 18th century, and Baladev Vidyabhushan, if you see Bhagavad Gita, this Bhagavad Gita as it is dedicated to Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan, because he presented so nicely the Govinda Bhasya commentary on the Vedanta philosophy. So Srila Prabhupada dedicates his book to Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan. So, and he refers to Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur and Baladev Vidyabhushan for the Bhakti Vedanta purpose. So there are so many beautiful commentaries like that. Bhagavad Gita, frankly, is a living book, and there can be more and more illuminations of the Bhagavad Gita as time goes by. It's a living theology, and as long as one looks at the texts of the Bhagavad Gita and follow the line of our previous acharyas, authentic acharyas, our parampara, then there's no problem in illuminating more and more aspects, facts, facets of the Bhagavad Gita. Unfortunately, there have been some concerns, because what happened in India is, for instance, individuals started commenting on the Bhagavad Gita for their own purpose. Like they started putting in their own ideas, their own conceptions of what Krishna is actually saying, and they started using it for extraneous purposes, for self purposes. And like, for instance, a very, very popular commentary on the Bhagavad Gita in India is the Bhagavad Gita Rahasya. And that is written by Bala Gangadhar Tilak, who is a national freedom fighter. Like, he's one of the forces behind the nationalist movement to liberate India from Britain. So, and his notion of using using the Bhagavad Gita, sort of using the Bhagavad Gita is, he loves the cry of war, or like call to war that Krishna gives to Arjuna, and then he uses that angle and he encourages the Indians, or like even the Karmanyeva Adhikaraste sloka, he tells it's your duty to do this for your kingdom without any expectation of any reward. or the fact like how Krishna tells that if you fight in war, you're victorious. Either you get a kingdom that's like with no enemies, or you'd get to go back to, you would get to go to heaven. So all these were used by him to encourage people, the Indians back then, to fight for liberation. Shri Nitai Sachinandan Dev Bhagwan ki jai. So you begin to see how now Bhagavad Gita is taken away from a spiritual context and it's being used for somewhat a more political context. And then of course we have Gandhi's version of the Bhagavad Gita. He's a big, not just fan, but he's glorified Bhagavad Gita a lot. But his movement was the Ahimsa movement. And this is the book which is talked during the in a war field, and the last sloka is Krishna saying fight, and Arjuna saying, oh, yeah, I'm all good, I'm going to fight. But still, so how he uses the Bhagavad Gita is, he says that the war and so forth is like an internal thing. So it's something in the mind, it's like a mental, internal thing, and he used it in that manner. And actually, Krishna is telling Ahimsa, don't fight. Who has read the Bhagavad Gita knows that's not the essence. So thing is, it didn't even just stay and stop in India. The first ever translation of the Bhagavad Gita in English was in 1730 by Charles Wilkins. And since then, there have been hundreds and maybe thousands of versions of the Bhagavad Gita. So that's like the commentarial history of Bhagavad Gita. Now coming to the contemporary, in the last history of Bhagavad Gita, and that's specifically Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, and how it came to being, and how can we justify the word as it is. We've never ever heard that before, and so forth. So Srila Prabhupada arrived to America in 1965. But what did he bring with him? Did he bring the Bhagavad Gita as it is? Anyone knows? No, he brought the Srimad Bhagavatam with him. The first 3 cantos is what he brought with him. Frankly, he actually wrote the Bhagavad Gita like an extensive introduction and so forth. The introduction that he wrote was written back in 1963, and he was all set to publish it. Unfortunately, the manuscript was stolen. And then when he came to America in 1965, 66, he again worked on all the commentaries and so forth, and he was ready to get it printed. As he was working on the Bhagavad Gita, his printer got stolen in New York, another unfortunate incident. So finally, in 1967, he had completed his translations and his commentaries and was ready to get it printed. And we'll talk a little bit about it. There's a wonderful pastime, a nice story for us to reminisce about, and just glorious pastime we can share. Everything that's related to Srila Prabhupada is a little magical always, so we'll talk about that in a second. So reason why Prabhupada, he saw the different commentaries in Bhagavad Gita, but he understood that nothing was frankly in that parampara line. And also, they were all like lacking that major focus on why Krishna is actually speaking the Bhagavad Gita, what's the aim of Bhagavad Gita, goal of Bhagavad Gita, essence of Bhagavad Gita. So Srila Prabhupada carries authority. Why? Because he's coming in that lineage, that parampara, all the way starting from Krishna, unlike the others that I just quoted, whoever gave other commentaries. And then Krishna frankly says, who speaks Bhagavad Gita? Krishna. And he himself says, you know how you need to learn the Bhagavad Gita? You need to understand this knowledge through a parampara. So Bhagavad Gita 4.3, he says, Sa evaya maya tedya yoga prokta puratana bhakto semi sakacheti rahasyam hetaduttamam. This very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and therefore you can understand the transcendental mystery of this science. So unless you live it, you breathe it, you apply it in your life, unless you take it seriously, unless you take what Krishna says seriously, and interact with people who take the Bhagavad Gita seriously, you can't really understand the Bhagavad Gita. And if you don't understand this from the parampara, you can't necessarily teach somebody, because you're not in the parampara, that purity won't be there. So if you were to teach somebody, they wouldn't really understand the goal, the essence of this literature. So Srila Prabhupada, he looked at all the other versions and he understood that they were not in Parampara. And this is not a sectarian statement, right? Because even those authors, in their own submission, they say that we don't necessarily follow the Bhagavad Gita. What's the point, right? If you can't apply this in your lives. So Srila Prabhupada, he calls the book as it is because it has authority. And it has transparency. If you have noticed, I don't know how many other versions of the Bhagavad Gita has the sloka in Sanskrit, which we established has never changed since 500 plus years. And then it has for all of us to read again Sanskrit in English so we can read. And this is there in multitudes of language. Any language you can think of, it's there. The book is available in that language. And then here there's something very unique, the transliteration. Each word has a meaning in English. So what does this establish? Prabhupada is showing transparency. It's like, you will know exactly how I came up with this translation. You will know exactly how all this means and how all this makes sense back to the sloka, the Sanskrit sloka. So he's being super transparent, and that's why that's another reason why Prabhupada calls his Bhagavad Gita as it is. And finally, applicability. Many people just stop there, they write the commentary and that's it. But Prabhupada gives applicability through his Bhaktivedanta purports. He tells us how actually you can live this life, how you can apply this life. It's not just an academic book. I mean, if you want to treat it as an academic book, that's how it will reveal itself to you. But if you really want to learn and live it, apply it in your life, then by all means, it gives applicability. We have a wonderful sannyasi in our movement called His Holiness Hridayananda Maharaj. He's frankly very intellectual. He studied at the Harvard University. And he was saying the first time he went to the temple and he heard the Bhagavad Gita as it is, the speaker was sharing that we are all part and parcel of Krishna, we are the soul, and we are servants of Krishna ultimately. And then right after the class, someone hands over a mop to him and says, okay, now clean the temple. So he was applying the knowledge that he had learned. He was taught that we're the servants of the Lord. And then now, next minute, he gets a mop in his hand. It's like being treated like a servant to serve the Lord. So he really appreciated that because his whole life he studied it as a philosophical book and was never really able to apply it. So it's easy for philosophical people to have a book that does a lot of mental gymnastics, right? But that's not what Krishna wants us to do, and Prabhupada has very, very, very lucidly explained that. So again, Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita is called Bhagavad Gita as it is because it has authority, transparency, and finally applicability. So we can get into the contemporary history. I told you there was a nice story. So Srila Prabhupada, do you remember which year he finished writing the Bhagavad Gita commentary? Just mention. Just want to make sure you're with me. 67, yes, very close. 67. So he was ready, and so Srila Prabhupada contacted Allen Ginsberg to help him get the Bhagavad Gita printed. So Allen Ginsberg was a very, very famous poet at that time. He donated like a harmonium to Prabhupada. He had made several donations. He introduced Prabhupada to the it people of the time and so forth. So Srila Prabhupada asked him, like, we have the Bhagavad Gita manuscript. Can you get that printed or published? And he tried, but after 6 months, he's like, I'm so sorry, no one's really interested. Then Srila Prabhupada asked Rai Rama Prabhu, can you get it printed? He too tried a lot. He reached out to several publishing agencies and so forth, but luck didn't strike. And then finally, Prabhupada asked Brahmananda Prabhu, can you get this printed? And Brahmananda Prabhu was like, well, Allen Ginsberg couldn't. Rai Rama Prabhu couldn't. I don't know if I can. But if you know Brahmananda Prabhu, he has 100% faith in the words of his spiritual master. So he didn't go down without a fight. He started reaching out to people and so forth. And then when he also read the manuscript, he was like, wow, this is actually, Srila Prabhupada is talking about the essence of Bhagavad Gita. How many people will really like it? Right? Like, people are more interested if it was just like a poetry, artistic form, or something that, massage one's ego or things like that. But this is really like pure. I don't know how many people can accept it. So he was concerned in that manner. something wonderful happened. So that's when the devotees actually released this record called the Hare Krishna record. And it was super famous during that time. So people all over America were reaching out and reaching out to the temple, asking, hey, can we get a copy, and so forth. So all these correspondence luckily came through Brahmanand Prabhu, and he noticed that one of the orders or one of the letters that came from was from the Macmillan publishers. And he was like, publishers, and he ran to Prabhupada. He's like, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, the Macmillan publishers are requesting for a copy of the Hare Krishna record. Srila Prabhupada's like, good, don't mail it to them. You personally go and give the record to them, and then ask them to publish the Bhagavad Gita as it is. And then Brahman Prabhu's like, sure, Srila Prabhupada, as you say. Shall I take some other copies of our other books also to get that published? And he's like, nope, just take the Bhagavad Gita as it is. The Bhagavad Gita manuscript, that would do. Then he said, okay, Srila Prabhupada, how about I take some facts about you to edify you? No, you just take Bhagavad Gita's manuscript, that will do. And then he's like, okay, Srila Prabhupada, and he goes. So he goes to Macmillan, he tries to figure out who is this person who wrote to him. To his dismay, the person is just a clerk in the front who requested for this album. So he's like, oh my God, what is this person going to do? He has no authority, no power to actually get the Bhagavad Gita published. What do I do? He's like, anyway, faith. I need to have faith in my Guru's words. So he goes to this person, he starts talking. And as he starts talking, somebody walks through the door, and this person says, oh, that's Mr. Wade. He's the senior publisher at the Macmillan Publishing Center. So he'll be the right person to ask. And then Brahman Prabhu's like astounded. He's like, what? Where did this guy appear from? Immediately he just looks at him. He says, we want to get the Bhagavad Gita published. Would you be interested? And that person is like, you have a manuscript? If so, who has written this edition? And then Brahmana Prabhu says that it's written by an Indian monk who lives in New York, who's currently in New York. And the publisher's like, and it's complete? He's like, yep, it's complete. And he's like, all right, we'll publish it. Right there, just like that, on spot, no questions asked. He's like, yep, we'll get it published. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. So Brahmana Prabhu goes back in amazement, and he's jumping with joy, and he goes and tells Shri Prabhupada, I have an amazing news. They've agreed to publish the Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada says, yeah, fine, sure. And then he's like as though Prabhupada really knew, right, that this is going to happen. To confirm all this, Satyaraj Prabhu, another disciple of Srila Prabhupada, actually went back many, many years later to meet this Mr. Wade to confirm the story. And he actually has written an article in the Back to Godhead magazine, and he confirms everything. And he says, his end of the story, he says, we have been thinking, we have published several books on theology and so forth, but never the Bhagavad Gita. And suddenly a monk appears from ISKCON, and he's asking if we can publish the Bhagavad Gita. So we were overjoyed. And then he goes on to say something maybe Brahmana Prabhu didn't know, or I'm not sure if he was aware, but Srila Prabhupada actually goes after Brahmananda Prabhu meets Mr. Wade and gives the manuscript of the Bhagavad Gita to Mr. Wade and has a really nice deep discussion with Mr. Wade. So, yeah. So in 1968, so Prabhu was right, the Bhagavad Gita was finally printed, and but Srila Prabhupada was requested to edit it down. So it was 1,000 pages. How many pages is our book? Yeah, almost, with everything. Yeah. No, 872. But it was 1,000 pages long, so they asked him to reduce it to 300 to 400 pages. And then in the front, now we have the war field here. But so since the Vietnam War was going on there, they just Govinda Dasi, one of Srila Prabhupada's personal secretary, Srila Prabhupada, so forth, discussed, and they decided, you know what, let's have maybe the universal form in the front. So she got that done, but those people felt it was very psychedelic to see a personality with 1,000 heads and 1,000 hands. So they requested for the 400 form of Lord Vishnu with one head, and they got that print. And Prabhupada's like, yeah, that's fine. It's Lord Vishnu. But finally, in 1972, because the Bhagavad Gita is being distributed so far, so wide, thanks to our book distribution team, so all glories to them, there was unprecedented demand for the book that when Srila Prabhupada spoke to the Macmillan publishers, they agreed that they can actually release the unabridged full version of Bhagavad Gita. So that's the 1972 Bhagavad Gita. And by then, you know, our Bhagavad Gitas are so special that they have beautiful pictures, illustrations in them. So Prabhupada got wonderful pictures done, and that's included. That was included in the 1972 version. And it has reached all over the world. So if anyone wants to learn anything, right, like lifestyle management, leadership, relationships, and so forth, this is the book. And thanks to BBT, which is the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, which Srila Prabhupada established, about 50 million Bhagavad Gita copies have been distributed. But we still believe that's just a drop in the ocean, and we need to take it further. Our acharyas actually say that the Bhagavad Gita is considered like a jewel box, and we really need to believe that. And the reason that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives is Bhagavad Gita actually split into 3 sections, right? We have 18 chapters, so 6, 6, 6. And just like a jewel box has a base, the first 6 chapters of the base of Bhagavad Gita. And because why? The first 6 chapters talk about Karma Yoga and, you know, how to live in this world, and you know, how to interact with the material nature, and then, you know, and not be affected by it necessarily. So in the world, but not of it, sort of, you know, mentality. And all this is described in the first 6 chapters. And the final 6 chapters are the lid, or the closing on top of that jewel box. And why is that? Because that final 6 chapters talk about the modes of material nature, how we can deter from its influence, how we can develop a sense of detachment from the onslaught of the material world, and so forth. So that's why, you know, again, Krishna talks about the threats of the modes of nature, threats of demoniac mentality, threats that can happen. And he discusses different things like that. And finally, the middle 6 chapters are the actual jewels in that jewel box, because it talks about Bhakti Yoga. And I don't know if you have noticed, but the 18th chapter, the 65th sloka, it's considered as the inscription on top of the lid. The sloka goes like this. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskurum mame vaishasi satyam te pratijani priyosi me. Krishna says, always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail, and I promise you this because you are my dear friend. And this is the inscription on the jewel box. So if this is the inscription on the jewel box, shouldn't it be contained within the jewel box also? It is. So the 9th chapter is called as the most confidential knowledge. And that, in 9.34, Krishna says the same verse. He says, Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskurum mame vaishasi yuktevam atmanam matparayanaham. He says, engage your mind, always thinking of me. Become my devotee, offer obeisances unto me, worship me, and become completely absorbed in me, and surely you will come to me. So very interesting, right, to like compare that and see that. And so that's how Bhagavad Gita is considered as a jewel box. And after Arjuna hears the whole Bhagavad Gita, later on in the Kurukshetra battlefield, he says a beautiful verse is said. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.15.27. Also it's quoted in Mahabharata. It's Deshakala Kalartha yuktani hritapopa shamani cha haranti smaratas chittam govinda hitani me. Now I am attracted to those words, those instructions imparted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, because they are impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all time, place, and circumstance. So after the Mahabharata war, or when his son was brutally murdered by the other party, Arjuna is again remembering the verses from Bhagavad Gita. And he's saying that these words in the Bhagavad Gita, despite time, place, and circumstances, despite desha kalartha yuktani, it's helping hrita popa shamanicha. It's helping to relieve the heart, the burning heart from its misery. So whatever time, wherever you may be, whatever time, whatever circumstances, the words of the Krishna have this ability to cool our burning heart. So that's the beauty of Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada wanted to make this most popular book, and I think that goes, that's now in our hands, right? But in order to do that, we need to in what Krishna explained 500 years ago and on a battlefield to today's people, right? I have a quick question just to, move things around. And so it goes like this. Atheism. How many gods are there in atheism? 0 God. Yes. Monotheism. 1. Polytheism. Many. Pantheism. Who do they worship? Nature, exactly. Autotheism, what does that mean? Who do they worship? Who's God? Self, themselves, right? But there's something else that's becoming more popular nowadays, and that is called apatheism. Apatheism is basically not somebody who is atheistic, not even agnostic, and definitely not monotheistic or polytheistic, but apatheistic is they're just being apathetic to a point that they don't believe in religion, or they don't feel that religion matters. They don't care, like, how is this useful to me? How am I benefiting from it? Instead, people are focusing on self-development, self-help books. That's what the world is moving towards. Some of the most popular self-help books. Anybody? Awesome. So, this is the self-help book. So there are books like The Atomic Habits, The Secret, The Power of Now, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, so forth. So many books like that. So they feel that that's what's going to help them, because if they apply that and live by that, they'll have a meaning to life. And unfortunately, people our age is very unphilosophical, right? Unlike the 18th century and so forth, where people were such great thinkers. And people are looking for like fast solutions, how to lose weight, 10 kilos in 1 month, right? Super fast solutions. How can I change this habit, like 7 habits of a spiritualist and so forth. So truth of the matter, not unfortunately, which they don't realize, is that self-development without spiritual development doesn't actually work. Self-development industry is actually a huge multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's said that the next 5 years is just going to double. So people are unaware that if you want to, unless you spiritually develop yourself, you can't really have self-development, because self-development will stagnate. And they have like divorced these two concepts of spiritual development and self-development. But Bhagavad Gita marries these two concepts. Everyone wants to be successful, and the basis of that is self-development. But unless you know what success is, unless you have taken the time to define success for you, can you be successful? Is someone's success or someone's goal of attaining something your success also? No, there have been like people who, for instance, you haven't revised for an exam, you go for the exam, and you're like, oh, Krishna saved me. The person sitting next to me is the school topper. And then, you copy everything very smartly, come out of the exam hall, only to realize that each of you had different exam questions. So we have to define success ourselves. And the whole first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita talks about redefining success. And the second chapter talks about rediscovering your identity. So authenticity is something people are really concerned about in today's day, right? We have something called as imposter syndrome, like, oh my God, will they really know that I really don't know how to do this and I'm just making it up and being super confident? So authenticity is something we lack. And thanks to the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita shines light on really knowing who you are, where you come from, what's your purpose. If we don't know who we are, how are we able to be authentic? Like one person was saying, I am not who I think I am. I am not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am. Right? So that's how disconnected we are from authenticity. And in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, what does he do? He goes to the deepest level of authenticity by explaining to Arjuna that you're not even this body. Who are you? You're a spiritual being. And from there, Krishna explains that as a spiritual being, you have a subtle covering, which is the mind, the intelligence, and the false ego. And you are now under the influence of the configuration of the modes, and you've developed this personality, and you really don't know who you are. So Bhagavad Gita truly teaches one how to become authentic. The next chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna teaches Arjuna how to reposition his life. And this is one of the biggest concerns of people in today's world. And are you okay? And he could are you okay? Okay. And I could really relate to this. And in today's world, we call it work-life balance. How do I manage my day-to-day duties and at the same time follow my deeper callings that I have in my heart? I have experienced this time and time again. I'm sure several of you might have also as well. And this is exactly what Arjuna was dealing with. Arjuna was basically struggling with work-life balance. He told Krishna, Krishna, I want to quit. And Krishna's like, don't quit your job. He's just like, you don't know how to balance it. I'll teach you how to balance it. And then that's when that famous sloka, Bhagavad Gita 2.47 comes into being. Krishna says, Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu katarjana ma karma phalahe durbur ma te sangostva karmani. You have the right to perform your prescribed duties, but you're not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activity, and never be attached to not doing your duty. So this is very relevant, and you begin to see how Krishna is presenting Bhagavad Gita according to time, place, and circumstance. Desha, Kala, Ta Yuktani. Even the World Health Organization, it claims that the latest disease out there, or something for us to look out for, is not anything physical, but mental. It relates with our mind. Krishna, knowing this, again, very clearly describes to Arjuna of how he's like, Arjuna, whatever you do, unless you conquer your mind, you make your mind your best friend, you can't do anything. It's a very practical explanation, right? Like, you can't achieve success in life. Talking about success, do we just want success in life? What does success in life comprise of? Yes, a job, a work, self-development, so forth. How about relationships? Don't you want success in relationships? So the next 6 chapters talks about Bhakti Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, the Bhakti chapters begin to explain how we can reawaken that true love. And the interesting thing is that if you look at the Bhakti chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is actually talking about the dynamics of how we can connect to Krishna in pure love. And if we take the principles of what Krishna is sharing to us there and apply it in any relationship, we will 100% achieve wonders. So there are many, many things like that Krishna teaches in Bhagavad Gita on how to develop bhakti for him, which is a universal principle and it will work if applied to any other relationship. And so if an atheistic person also, or even were to read the Bhagavad Gita, he or she can still get something out of the Bhagavad Gita, even if they don't believe in Krishna. What does Krishna say? He says that you have to establish the deepest relationship first with me. First, re-establish the deepest relationship, and from there, every other relationship will click, will work. Then further on, Krishna talks in chapter 10, 11, and 12 about how we can reconnect. Actually, he says reconnect with me, but he says now he goes on in 10, 11, 12 to say how we can actually reconnect with him. And how does he do that? By sharing with us how we can see him everywhere. Right? And it's very, very relevant because we're somehow trying to draw this aggressive demarcation between science and spirituality. They say science is that which can be perceived, that which can be experienced and empirically proved. However, spirituality is just about faith. But in these chapters, Krishna actually explained to us that you can see divinity everywhere. In Bhagavad Gita 6.30, he says, Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mai pashyati tasyaham na pranashyami sache me na pranashyati. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he lost to me. Krishna says spirituality can entirely be experiential, entirely be perceivable. His Holiness Swayam Bhagwan Keshav Swami Maharaj, from whose class this whole discussion has been inspired from. He actually tells one devotee that, I'm not sure if Krishna, this is initially when he came to the temple, he said, I'm not sure if Krishna really exists. And that person looked back at him and said that, we're not trying to prove to you that Krishna actually exists. And he's like, oh, then what are you trying to prove here? He said, we're not trying to prove that Krishna exists. We're only giving you the tools, the processes, the practices by which you will be able to perceive the presence of Krishna in every moment of your life. Isn't that more powerful? We're not trying to make you believe in Krishna. We're empowering you to perceive Krishna's presence at all times. And what we can see from this conversation is there's a whole other vision of the Bhagavad Gita, and that it's not a religious book. It's a book that's training us to reconnect with divinity and see its presence everywhere. Going on from chapter 13 to 17, so much about what Krishna talks is the world around us, the energies, the three modes of nature, and how, the three modes of nature, how we deal with the three modes of nature. Frankly, if we learn how to work those three modes of nature, it's a wonderful lifestyle model, right? It's the most versatile, the most comprehensive, most applicable kind of framework which can teach us how to lead life, every single aspect of your life. Like, for instance, if you want to drive the car, you can decide in which mode you want to drive the car. If you want to parent your child, you can decide in which mode you want to parent them. If you want to eat food, what environment you want to, associate yourself with, what kind of people you want to associate with. If you really learn the three modes of material nature, you will know, it'll help you model the lifestyle you want to live. So, and this is what self-development books are trying to do, right? Give people the best chance of succeeding. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna spends about 100 of these 700 verses talking about the three modes of material nature. And to end that, so finally the end, what does Arjuna say after getting all this knowledge in 18.73? So this is the conclusion, right? So we shared a quick overview or bird's eye view of each chapter and how it can actually be applied in our lives and how it's truly the best self-development book or self-help book. After hearing this self-help book firsthand, this is what Arjuna, one of the greatest warriors out there, greatest personalities out there, had to say. He says in 18.73, Arjuna vacha, Nashto moha smridalabda tvat prasada maya chuta stitosmi gata sandeha karishe vachanam tava. He says, O my Lord Krishna, O infallible one, my illusions have now gone. I have regained my memory by your mercy, and now I am firm and free from doubt, and I'm prepared to act according to your instructions. So he says, I know my purpose now. I know my purpose again. And this is one of the biggest things of the world, finding your purpose. The best alarm clock is not any expensive thing you can find on Amazon, but when you know your purpose, you will jump out of that bed, right? You have something to look forward to. Therefore, if we were to share with the people how the Bhagavad Gita relates to us in every single one of our needs, our interests, our concerns, we can really touch people's heart and make them feel that, make them understand how Bhagavad Gita has deeper solutions to life. So if you want a new idea, go to an old book, and I don't know of an older book than a 5,000-year-old book that sits in our library. With that, I'd like to end today's discussion. Today we have in our hands Bhagavad Gita. It's a great fortune. It's high time we realize that and take most advantage of this great Shastra. Bhagavad Gita, as it is, ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Happy to give a quick summary. If anyone wants to share a quick summary, we can do that as Mataji prepares, or if any questions, answers. If I know, I'm happy to shine some light. Otherwise, we have wonderful, great devotees here who can help do that. All right. Thank you all so much. Anantakoti Vaishnavinda ki jai.
विष्णुपदाय कृष्णापृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण